What's up, guys? Streams here, and we are doing our very first Gen 7 rate for Smogon here. So this team was brought to us by Evanile. We got it from the forums, and it encompasses a Tapu Lele and Mega Metagross core for Psychic Spam, and then we have Dugtrio Magnezone as dual trappers, a Yachi Berry Landorus, and then a Shift Gear Megairna. So, starting off right off with our changes, Dennis will explain our changes to Tapu Lele.
Okay, the first change we have to make was making Tapu Lele Calm Mind with leftovers, because we need win condition against fodder teams. For example, after a Calm Mind on their Psychic Terrain, Lele is capable of 2-hit KO Chansey. Also, we have Taunt, because we can break passive stall teams like Dual Regenerator Core or something like that. And in the back we have Metagross, just to break basically every balanced team. After that we have Metagross completing the Psychic Spam with basically Meteor Mash and Headbutt, EQ and Thunder Punch. Thunder Punch is to hit Manta and Tapu Fini.
Yeah, Celesteela as well, which would pretty much wall the score, and could EQ Magnezone on the Switch if it does decide to run that.
Yeah, and although in ORAS people used to run Hammer Arm, in this generation Earthquake is a lot better than Hammer Arm, as it's hitting stuff like Marowak.
Mm-hmm. Which would pretty much wall Metagross otherwise, and this team doesn't really have much aside from Landorus that could take on Marowak, so therefore running Earthquake to hit it is more effective.
Also, we have the support of the dual trapper, so we can continue explaining that.
So,
yeah. So the next mon that will be is Dugtrio, and the changes that we're going on here, we think the arena trap and the trapping is very important in general on this team. However, instead of running Earthquake, Stone Edge, Sucker Punch, and Stealth Rock, we're going to be running Memento over Stealth Rock. And Memento over Stealth Rock will allow us to, it'll give us Tapu Lele set up possibly late game, and due to a change that we'll make later, we won't need Stealth Rocks on the Dugtrio anymore.
Yeah, just Memento in general is just very, very nice, because if you bring in Lele after on an offensive team, if something's on -2 on both offenses, you can set up a Calm Mind pretty easily in that case. Whereas before, you couldn't really use Lele as well against a more offensive team.
Yeah, you can KO easy, more stuff.
And then also one thing that you could do is, if you wanted to put Memento over Sucker Punch, if you wanted to be able to trap that Marowak for a Metagross, because Ghost types won't get trapped by Arena Trap.
You say Memento over Sucker.
I meant Pursuit over Sucker.
Well, looks like there's going to be a lot of editing. Anyways, now that Dugtrio is being discussed, we'll move on to discussing the changes, if any, to Magnezone.
Yeah, so on Magnezone, it's pretty simple set, and we want this to be able to trap things like a Skarmory or a Celesteela that could possibly threaten, again, Psychic Stab, or the Psychic Spam, which is an important thing on this team. However, HP Ground is a little irrelevant. Not irrelevant, but it's overkill. As in, we already have Dugtrio and Landorus and Metagross that'll be able to hit a Marowak, so we're not super concerned on baiting it with a Magnezone. So instead, we'll be running HP Fire, and that'll be for things like Kartana.
Scizor.
Yeah, Kartana, Scizor, just Steel types in general. And additionally, it's not like Marowak has that reliable recovery, and if you get rocks up, Flash Cannon is going to be doing a good 20 to 30 anyways, so it's not really that useful to be locked into it, and furthermore, being locked into Specs HP Ground and is not that optimal when you have stuff like SD Pinsir, SD Scizor, for example, as well, which would just destroy this team if it manages to get a free switch on your weird HP Ground Magnezone. So with that said, we're going to move on to the last two mons. looking at this lander set, like, I do appreciate that a Yachi Berry was run to help take on stuff like Tapu Koko, Thundurus more effectively. However, Dugtrio's on this team to trap those Vons bar Thundurus, and we already have Lele and a Metagross which can take a hit from Thundurus and just kill it back. So therefore, having a Yachi Berry to take a hit from faster electric types is not necessary. Looking at the team, this team doesn't really have any sort of physically defensive presence, and really struggles against hyper offense. So stuff like Mega Pinsir, stuff like offensive fighting types especially, trouble the team, because you don't want to switch Lele in, which is a lot of the time the win condition in against offensive fighting types. So, therefore, we decided to change the lander set to a standard defensive set instead of the offensive set. And since we removed rocks on Dugtrio, we decided to throw them on Landorus. This is a fairly standard set that we're running. That was also very popular in ORAS. EQ, Edge, U-turn, rocks, and also we are going to run 20 in speed in order to outrun uninvested Tapu Fini and be able to U-turn on it instead of being forced out and into Magnezone, for example. And lastly, there.
But while we're on Landorus,
okay.
It isn't so Earthquake, Stone Edge, U-turn, Stealth Rock is standard. However, when looking at the team, if you when you're battling with it, if you see opposing defensive Landoruses as an issue, and you're not really running into all that many Volcaronas, it is possible that you could run HP Ice over Stone Edge.
Yeah, and in which case you would most likely want to run a relaxed nature. However, that does make Tapu Fini a little bit more annoying. And the final note on Landorus is you have a choice between Leftovers and Helmet. I personally feel that Leftovers is more useful because this is a team's kind of real only answer to offensive ground types, and therefore it gets worn down quite easily without the helmet. But both options are still perfectly acceptable, so trying both out would be advised. So for the very last change, this is a fairly major change that we're making, and we felt that Magearna is not that. It doesn't really have that much of a role on this team, mainly because it's stacking steel types and therefore fire weaknesses with Zone and Metagross, and ground weaknesses as well, not to mention. And also, it doesn't really help break down steel types for those Mons. All it really does is serve as a secondary win con with Shift Gear. So we felt that putting the spot to better use is more effective, especially since this team has a Sash Dugtrio and doesn't have hazard removal. We felt that having some sort of Mon that would give us a fire resist, that could give us a water resist, which we don't have, and also give us some sort of hazard removal while still having an offensive presence would be advised. So therefore, for the last change, we decided to replace Magearna to Scarf Salamence. Now this might seem like an interesting change, and it is a very interesting change because it's a very significant one. And this is a Scarf set that's going to be using dual Dragon Stab. There's no need to run Fire Blast and EQ because we have Zone and Dugtrio to trap Steel types. And we also have Defog in order to actually provide some hazard removal to preserve Dugtrio's Sash. And Outrage and Dragon Claw are there. It might seem a bit weird to run both, but Outrage is really nice late game against offensive teams with a Scarf to be able to snowball with Moxie. And we are also running Moxie because of the fact that it can snowball and it can snowball quite well with a Scarf. And Dragon Claw is there obviously so you don't get locked in in case a Fairy comes in. And EQ is just there to hit stuff like Heatran, which you don't really want to switch Dougie in on directly because it could just Lava Plume burn you, for example.
And burn you,
yeah.
Or Magma Storm trap you, and then that would also be the damage.
Exactly.
EQ is also to revenge Tapu Koko.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point. EQ is needed because we removed Oyashi on Landorus, therefore Landorus can't really take it on as well, so EQ is needed to revenge Galak. For the EVs, standard offensive EVs, both speed maximized, is what we're going to be doing. And I feel like I've explained these 2 months quite well. Do you guys have anything to add about those?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and say, originally we were going to run Tapu Lele Scarf and then run Magearna as the setup sweeper as it is now, but realizing that Magearna just increases your ground weakness, we decided to use Salamence, but it's really important that it's a Scarf user. Because something, for example, like Pheromosa, a really fast Mon that can easily U-turn out on stuff, threatens his team enormously. So to have that Scarfer to beat other fast Scarfers is really important.
Yeah. And
another thing that I want to mention is we can use Bullet Punch over Thunder Punch on Metagross to revenge fast stuff like Weavile and Pheromosa, for example, that can cause troubles to the team.
Yeah, that is actually a very good option as well. That's a very good point. Also, the Scarfer is really needed on this team because this team is very slow outside of Metagross and really struggles against offense as a result of that. So having a dedicated revenge killer is very important here. In my opinion, at least.
Yeah, so, basic overview of the team is, Lele and Metagross are both really strong psychic abusers, which is really good typing in this gen right now. And then we're having Dugtrio and Zone. And then Dugtrio and Zone will break through the things that are stopping it. Landorus is standard, and then Salamence is to beat down the faster Mons.
Yeah.
As well as get hazard removal.
It's a very interesting team thanks to the submitter. I like the idea of 2 psychic spam core coupled with a trapper core, which removes psychic spammers checks, and then a revenge killer and a defensive or more offensive pivot. It's a cool team. Okay, I think with that said, I have nothing else to add pertaining to the team or anything. Thank you guys for coming down today. It's been...
And email us at rmtcast@gmail.com. Send us your Gen 7 teams of any of the tiers that are already out.
Yeah.
Which is really just OU. Once UU gets out of Alpha, then feel free to send us those as well, because we're going to start doing different tiers as well.
Exactly. Before we wrap this up, do you have any lasting thoughts about the team or anything else you want to add, just in general?
I think Pursuit Dugtrio will be better if you see a lot of Gengars, because this team is kinda weak to Ghost. Like
Yeah, like which team has a Ghost resist? I'm just thinking.
Exactly. Yeah.
Pursuit's cool. Like Sucker Punch is kind of just like you're not clicking it very often. Like if anything, running it. Yeah, so that's an option as well. That to run Pursuit over Sucker Punch. Yeah, I think.
I think another cool thing to mention will be, despite we have defog on Salamence, we really don't wanna click it too soon. Salamence is there to revenge stuff rather than support the team. Defog is just a last-ditch effort to another member.
So, like, I'm just thinking of an example. Like, one thing to not do is only defog if you have to. If that makes sense, it's not like you're on a team with like Mega Pinsir or Talonflame, whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you don't have to constantly defog. Like if they get rocks up, for example, and it's not a lot of time it isn't worth losing the momentum just to get off that defog. Like think about that. And like for example, like in a situation, let's say they have a Tapu Koko and you have the Dugtrio and your Ments, and let's just say like it's I don't know, some bulky Tapu Koko that won't die to Ments EQ. I don't know. And so in that case, you would have to defog to get rid of the rocks to be able to have your sash so that you can take a hit from Coco and then revenge heal. Like a situation where you have to keep Dugtrio is a situation where you defog. Otherwise, it isn't as important for this team. But that was the point that we were trying to get at. Okay. Anything else that you want to mention, add?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Just remember, email us with your teams.
Yep.
Thank you for watching. Really appreciate it.
And leave some feedback. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for joining.
All right. Thank you.
Joining us. And
all right.
Peace out, guys.